Hi, Nancy Levin here with another episode of Raw and Real. So here's what's on my mind today. My conscious choice not to have children. My sister and I were out and about yesterday and we ran into a friend of hers who incidentally is an OBGYN, and they were talking about their kids, and at one point I exclaimed, I have no children. And she said to me, was that by choice? And then she was kind of a little taken aback by her own forthrightness in asking such a provocative question. And I said, actually, it was by choice. It was by very conscious choice. And in fact, I've never wanted children. I've never had that thing that women talk about having, or people talk about having, around the biological desire to have a child even. And from a very early age, I would say I was obsessed with birth control, really knowing that I never wanted to have a child and didn't want to even put myself at risk of having a child by accident or getting pregnant by accident. So I've always known I didn't want children. And in fact, I was married before my sister was. And so it was sort of the natural progression, I suppose, for my mother to be asking me, when are you going to have a baby? When are you going to have children? Why do you keep telling me you don't want children? And I finally had to say to her, I keep telling you I don't want to have children because you keep asking me. So if you stop asking me, I won't need to keep telling you. And I know for my mother, it was a way in which she wanted to be able to bond with me, a way that we could bond over both being mothers, that it's a bond. That piece of the bond isn't something that we have. It's something that my mother and my sister clearly have, as they both have children. But it's not a piece of our relationship that I can relate to her around. And I think that that's what she really wanted. I think she wanted me to understand maybe what it was like for her, or, what she went through, or what the experience is of being a mother. I often will say that I feel like I'm a mother in the easiest and best way possible, which is being an aunt. I think being an aunt is the best thing ever. And I often will say that my sister had my children for me. Because especially, with my decision not to have children, I didn't ever expect to be able to have that experience of seeing a child that I felt so much connection with, and seeing myself in a child. And with my niece, it's really uncanny. There's so much similarity. There's similarity in our look. There's similarity in our personality. There's similarity in our way of being, and it's amazing to me to feel that with a child. And with my nephew, it's a very different kind of connection. And that relationship had to really grow over time. And so I now am in this place where I absolutely love being with these people who are my niece and nephew. I love being able to have this rapport with these kids, and I love that I get to give them back. And I do think that that's like the best thing about being an aunt. When the kids were little, I used to watch them, and I made up this rule that, you cannot say no to me. And this rule has stuck to this day. The kids are almost 14 and 17, and they still won't say no to me. So sometimes my sister will even say, can you ask them to do X, Y, Z, because they won't say no to you. And I love being able to have that relationship and friendship, and being able to witness them growing. And I love the experience, and this really happened at both their bar and bat mitzvahs. I found myself really uncontrollably emotional because I was witnessing their emergence and also noticing my own mortality, essentially. Noticing, that as they're coming of age, it also coincides with my own aging. And so that's also been a really interesting experience for me. Again, because I didn't have children, I didn't know that I would feel these kinds of things. And yet I noticed now that I do in context with my niece and my nephew. So, the other piece that I wanted to sort of mention, because it's also on my mind, is, I coach thousands of people, and I will say many or even most are parents. And there can be a sort of division perhaps around, if I'm talking about make yourself a priority or, embrace selfishness, that there might be a part of you that's thinking, oh, well, that's easy for you to say you don't have children. And you know what? We all have our go-to excuses. Just because I don't have children doesn't mean that I don't have my own version of that. It just shows up differently for me. But so I've always said all along, I'm not ever looking for you to disregard responsibility around your children. I'm simply asking for you to bring yourself into the equation where up until now you have not. So again, remembering the both and, that we can have people that we're caring for and we can care for ourselves in the process. It's not an either or, and it's not one or the other. And in fact, when we care for ourselves, we are able to care for each other even better. So these are the things that are on my mind today. I often get asked about why I didn't have children, and it was a very conscious choice, and it always interests me when people want to get into real debate with me also about my choice, coming from a place of, it's a woman's duty to have children, coming from something that might be, biblical or religious beliefs, and yet I certainly believe that having a child is more impact on the world than not having a child. So I find myself in this awkward position of defending my position. And so I thought I would just come on here and chat with you today to see, in case any of you were wondering what was up with me and not having kids. That's what's up. It was a very conscious choice. It was something that just never arose in me as an alive desire. And so instead, I decided to honor that as opposed to just doing what was wanted or expected of me by anybody else. All right, my loves, I look forward to being back with you again for another episode and Raw and Real next week.